The ink isn't even dry on the paper in Davos, and the markets are already, well, they're mispricing the risk. We're talking about the Greenland framework deal announced just 4 hours ago, January 22, 2026. The headlines are painting this as a triumph of diplomacy. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stepping in to save the Atlantic Alliance.
Diplomacy.
Yeah.
That's a very polite word for what just happened.
Yeah?
If you actually look at the leverage used, this wasn't a handshake. It was a hostage negotiation. The United States didn't ask Europe for cooperation in the Arctic. They put a loaded gun to the head of the German export economy and said, give us the rocks, or we tariff your cars into oblivion.
This is Neural Pulse. I'm looking at the raw data, the trade flows, the supply chains.
And I'm looking at the collapse of the order you think you still live in.
Okay, so let's strip away the press release fluff. We need to dissect three distinct signals blinking red on the dashboard this morning. First, the reality of this Greenland deal and the resource war with China that's behind it. Second, a historic and frankly terrifying divergence in the financial markets between gold and oil. And third, the silence. The silence coming out of Iran.
And we need to answer the question nobody wants to ask. Why is a department store bankruptcy in New York the most important survival lesson you'll hear this year?
Let's start with the Arctic. The Greenland crisis has been building for weeks. To understand the deal, you have to look at the leverage. The U.S. threatened a blanket 20% tariff on European luxury goods and autos. Why? To secure rights, title, and interest to undeveloped rare earth deposits in Greenland.
It's a desperate move. I mean, you don't threaten your oldest allies like that unless you are starving. And the U.S. military-industrial complex is, right now, starving.
And the starvation is a direct result of logistics. Specifically, China's export control number 61. This was implemented back in late 2025. And we have to be precise here. China controls 90% of global rare earth refining and, even more importantly, 93% of permanent magnet manufacturing.
This is the kill switch. People hear rare earths and they think of cell phones. No, we were talking about neodymium and dysprosium. Without these, you cannot build the guidance system for a missile. You cannot build the motor for an F-35 fighter jet. You cannot build an electric submarine.
The data shows the U.S. stockpiles hit critical lows in December. The supply chain effectively went into cardiac arrest. Beijing tightened the tap, and the Pentagon realized they couldn't scale production for a potential conflict in the Pacific. Why? Because they didn't have the raw materials. Hence, Greenland. It holds the largest undeveloped deposits outside of China.
And that's why Roots' intervention is just a Band-Aid, a piece of tape on a gaping wound. The framework deal allows for a joint security and resource development framework. That sounds nice, but look at the vector of power. The U.S. is essentially militarizing resource access. They told Europe, we are taking these minerals. You can sign the paper and call it a partnership, or we can trade war you into a recession and take them anyway.
It redefines the Atlantic Alliance, doesn't it? It's no longer a value-based partnership. It's a transactional resource pact.
It's the sine qua non of survival, without which, nothing.
Okay.
The Americans realized that without these minerals, the rules-based international order is just a polite fiction. You can't enforce rules without weapons, so the free market is dead. You don't buy these resources on the open market anymore, you take them. We are watching the transition from a global economy based on efficiency to a fragmented economy based on kinetic security.
And that fragmentation is bleeding into the financial markets in a way that, well, it defies traditional economic theory. We need to talk about the great divergence happening today. I'm looking at the ticker right now. Gold has hit a historic high, trading over $4,800 per ounce. Goldman Sachs is projecting $5,400 by Q3.
A massive flight to safety.
But here's the anomaly. Usually when you have that kind of fear or inflation, commodities move together. But look at oil. Brent crude has crashed. It's sitting at roughly $56 a barrel.
This shouldn't happen. In a normal world, gold goes up because of fear, oil goes up because conflict threatens supply. But they are splitting. They're moving in opposite directions.
The oil crash is explainable, on the surface, by supply dynamics. We have massive oversupply from non-OPEC countries, the U.S., Brazil, Guyana, flooding the market. And at the same time, we see a structural drop in demand due to the EV shift and a slowing industrial sector.
But it's deeper than that. The market is pricing in two contradictory realities at the same time. Gold is behaving as the ultimate fear index. But it's not just fear of war, it's an exit strategy. We are seeing central banks in the global South, China, Russia, India, even Brazil, dumping U.S. treasuries to buy physical gold.
They're physically removing their wealth from the Western financial system.
Exactly. They saw what happened to Russian assets years ago, seized with a keystroke. They see the U.S. weaponizing the dollar. So gold at $4,800 isn't just inflation. It's the price of distrust. It's the premium you pay to possess money that Washington cannot turn off.
Meanwhile, oil at $56 is the stagnation index. It's telling us the industrial engine of the old world is stalling.
Right. If the global economy was growing, oil would be $90 regardless of EVs. The fact that it's collapsing tells you that China's recovery never materialized and Europe is deindustrializing. So you have gold screaming the currency is dying and oil screaming the economy is stopping. It's a signal of stagflation on a planetary scale.
So we have the West militarizing resources, the financial markets hedging against a total system reset. Now, let's pivot to the third signal, which is maybe the most disturbing because of what we can't see. The situation in Iran.
The silence. The silence is the loudest thing happening in the world right now.
We are tracking a digital invisible war. The casualty estimates following the recent uprisings are terrifyingly divergent. Official Iranian state media is reporting 3,117 deaths, but intelligence filtering out through UN channels and doctors on the ground suggests the real number is over 20,000.
And the only reason the world doesn't know for sure is because the lights have been turned off.
Let's get technical on how they did this. In previous uprisings, activists used smuggled Starlink terminals to bypass local ISPs. This time, the silence held. Our reports indicate a massive deployment of electronic warfare assets by the IRGC.
This is the Starlink war.
Precisely. They aren't just cutting fiber optic cables anymore. The IRGC is using military-grade jamming equipment, likely supplied by their partners in the Eurasian bloc, to physically jam the uplink frequencies. They are flooding the sky with noise, preventing the terminals from locking onto the low Earth orbit satellites.
They're blinding the sky.
And it's combined with the final stage of their national internet project. As of January 22, tests indicate they have successfully implemented a whitelist system.
This is crucial for you, for the listener, to understand. The old way of censorship was a blacklist. You block Facebook, you block the BBC, but everything else works. A whitelist means the internet is off by default. Only approved government entities, banks, essential services. Only they have access to the outside world. The population is trapped in a curated, monitored internal network.
It's a digital aquarium.
It's digital autarky. This is the blueprint for the future of authoritarianism. If Iran can commit mass violence in Tehran without a single video streaming to YouTube or X, they have solved the dictator's dilemma. They have successfully severed the feedback loop of the global village, the concept of a connected humanity witnessing each other's struggles. It's burning down right now in Iran.
This brings us back to the macro view. We have the Atlantic bloc grabbing resources. We have the Eurasian bloc going dark and building internal systems. The world is splitting.
And you, the listener, you're stuck in the middle, probably still operating as if it's 2019. You think these are headlines about foreign policy. They aren't. They're warnings about your own supply chain.
And this is where we need to bridge the gap between them and you. Because what connects the rare earth crisis, the gold exit strategy, and the Iranian internet is the concept of systemic fragility. And that fragility just claimed a massive victim in the retail sector.
This is the pivot point. The macro collapse is finally hitting the pavement in New York City.
Breaking news from the retail sector. Saks Global, the owner of Saks Fifth Avenue and Neiman Marcus, has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
The timing is impeccable.
This is a massive collapse. To understand the scale, you have to look at the balance sheet. They're weighed down by a $2.2 billion debt load. But if you dig into the filing, the immediate cause of death wasn't just poor sales, it was a death spiral driven by supply chain financing.
This is a critical mechanism. Explain how the death spiral actually works in retail, because it's exactly what is happening to the global economy.
It works like this. Retailers like Saks rely on factors, these financial intermediaries who pay the vendors upfront for the clothes, then collect from Saks later. It's basically a credit line. During the holiday season, the factors got spooked by Saks debt. They stopped approving shipments.
Meaning the credit dried up.
Correct. The moment the factors stopped paying the vendors Prada, Gucci, all the high-end brands stopped shipping the goods. The shelves went empty. Saks couldn't sell what they didn't have, which meant they couldn't pay the debt, which meant the factors cut them off further.
It's a confidence game. The moment the trust evaporated, the physical flow of goods stopped. This is the death of the middleman. And this is where we need to turn the camera from them to you.
Yeah.
Most people listening to this operate exactly like a department store.
Explain that analogy.
Think about the wholesale model of life. Saks doesn't make anything. They rent a building, they curate goods made by others, and they resell them. They are a platform. They rely on credit and trust to keep the goods flowing.
And you're saying the average individual does the same.
Look at your life. You outsource your safety to the police. You outsource your income to a corporation. You outsource your food supply to the grocery store. You are just a showroom for goods and services provided by other institutions. You are a middleman in your own existence.
And like Saks, that works fine when credit is flowing and the system is stable.
Exactly. Saks died because they didn't own the product. When the credit dried up, when the trust in the system evaporated, the vendors pulled the plug. The shelves went empty overnight. If a luxury giant can vanish because the supply chain lost faith in it, what makes you think your personal safety net, your pension, your job security, your grid connection is any more real?
It's a harsh comparison, but the data on fragility backs it up. The institutions are fragile because they're over-leveraged and dependent on these complex chains that are breaking, just like the F-35 supply chain is breaking over rare earths. But interestingly, while Saks is collapsing, we are seeing a very different story playing out at Paris Fashion Week happening right now.
The contrast is the lesson.
We're looking at Rick Owens. His show on January 22 is titled The Temple. While the department stores are failing, his business is thriving. He runs a vertically integrated direct-to-consumer model.
He doesn't need Saks. That's the entire point.
Let's look at the aesthetic because it mirrors the geopolitical reality. His collection this season is being described as survivalism. Heavy leather, soft armor, distinct structural shapes, it's almost combative. Contrast that with another show from the same week, Issey Miyake, which focused on shelter clothing as a soft refuge from the world.
Two responses to the collapse. Miyake offers a place to hide, a soft shell to crawl into while the world burns. Rick Owens offers armor. He offers a warlord model.
Warlord model.
In business terms, yes. He built a temple, a tribe, a cult following that buys directly from him. He owns his distribution. He owns his narrative. He isn't renting space in someone else's mall. He built his own fortress.
So the application here is about autonomy?
It is about strategic autonomy, the exact same thing Europe is trying to find with the Greenland deal, the exact same thing Iran is trying to build with their intranet. Rick Owens is the model for 2026 survival. The question to you, to the listener, is simple. Are you building a fortress, or are you just renting space in a dying mall because the landlord is bankrupt?
And it's not just economic forces squeezing you, it's regulatory ones too. We mentioned the blocs earlier, Atlantic versus Eurasian. The European Union is currently solidifying its walls with the Brussels effect.
The regulatory superpower.
A carbon border adjustment mechanism, CBAM, is now fully active. It's taxing dirty imports based on their carbon footprint. And coming up in February 2026, the EU AIX full bans kick in.
This is the portcullis coming down.
We are seeing agentic AI, these autonomous security operations centers, replacing humans to fight AI-driven cyber attacks. The speed of warfare has exceeded human reaction time. But the regulatory aspect means if you don't fit the clean safe box defined by Brussels, you are cut off.
Look at Indian steel exports. They're being crushed by CBAM because they can't prove they are green enough.
This applies to individuals too. If your skills, your digital identity, or your personal economy aren't compliant with the new safety protocols of the Western Bloc, you will be deplatformed. You will be digitally excommunicated, just like the Iranian internet. The world is splitting into the clean, safe, militarized West and the dark, autarkic East. And if you are in the West, the price of admission is total compliance and total transparency.
And if you are outside of it, you are in the jungle. This is why the warlord mindset is not a metaphor. It is a necessity. You need to control your own supply chain. Can you generate your own power? Do you own your own data? Do you have a tribe that will support you when the vendor stops shipping?
It's a daunting checklist.
It's the only checklist that matters.
Let's synthesize this. We have the gold price signaling the end of the dollar's hegemony. We have the Arctic signaling the return of kinetic resource wars. We have the retail sector signaling the end of the passive middle class.
And we have the silence in Iran signaling what happens when the state decides it no longer needs to listen to you.
The argument here seems to be that the era of frictionless globalization, that period from, 1990 to 2020, where we could just buy whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, from wherever, is over.
Dead and buried. We're in the era of choke points. You are currently dependent on choke points you do not control. The Strait of Hormuz, a rare earth mine in Inner Mongolia, a server farm in Northern Virginia, a bankrupt retailer in New York. Any one of these can snap, and your life stops.
The provocation here is uncomfortable. We are used to asking, what is the government going to do about this? Or what is the Fed going to do?
And that is the victim mindset, the Saks mindset. I hope the vendor keeps shipping. The breakdown of the global system means the breakdown of your daily necessities. No one is coming to save you. Not the Fed, not the treaty, not the police. When the grid fails, the only government left is you.
That brings us to the final challenge. We've laid out the evidence. The diplomacy is a facade for resource grabbing. The markets are hedging against a total reset. The digital world is being fenced off.
So stop acting like a victim waiting for a bailout. Act like a warlord of your own life. Secure your own supply chain. Build your own tribe. Create something that cannot be turned off by a switch in Tehran or a bankruptcy court in Delaware. The vacuum is here.
Interpret the silence accordingly. This has been Neural Pulse. Clarity in a complex world.
Decide your move.